So let's get started with the event. I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Steve Shanko. He is going to talk about AI and how it empowers your business. So Steve has a lifelong passion for building and engineering, and he spent the first part of his career as a software developer and a technical lead. He began working with enterprises to bridge that divide between the development, security, and the whole SDLC lifecycle. Today, Steve is helping the largest Fortune 100 organizations develop standards and processes and automations to address enterprise AI and low-code development risks. So without further ado, I want to introduce, welcome Mr. Steve Shanko.
That stage is really shaky. All right. Just a moment to set up my laptop, and then we'll get going. Really keeping me on my toes today.
Do you want me to move this and put this right here?
Ideally, that would be
absolutely.
awesome. All right, good morning. Everybody excited? Yeah, let's get some energy. Come on, yeah, woo! All right. So welcome to my talk about the rise of AI for business users. And of course, what that means for security, because we all care about security. I'm Steve with Zenity, and we're securing enterprise Gen AI and no-code apps. And if that sounds interesting, then you're in the right place. You're going to enjoy the talk. And also, we're hiring, so you can talk to me later. I think it's fair for you to know a little bit about me before we dive into the nitty-gritty. So I'm obsessed with milk tea. I'm a huge nerd. I think that came through a little bit already. Woohoo, nerds, where are you at? All right. Yes. But I make mistakes sometimes, like crashing my drone into a tree the first week I got it. Luckily, I was able to fix it. 3D printing some stuff. This is a Chicago skyline kind of thing for a friend. But I'm also into sports. I was safe on that, and I don't play tackle football anymore, maybe when I was younger. From a professional perspective, one slide too many. From a professional perspective, I think Gary did a good job introing it, so I'll skip through that. But AI is here. That doesn't look right. Gen AI is here. That's better. What year is it, 2024 now? Almost 2025. And the economic potential of Gen AI is huge. It's the next big thing. What's that? Phone call from the year 2023. They said, "I told you so." I don't know if you noticed that. I didn't sneak it in on purpose. It's just really small. This is over a year ago. And we're actually already starting to see that potential convert into real impact to the business. AI really is everywhere, and Gen AI specifically. Now, I couldn't resist including this. Sometimes AI is a gimmick or a sales pitch. This hasn't aged well, though. Increasingly, people are doing real stuff with AI, productive business use cases. If you don't believe me, that's okay. I have some really impressive friends. Well, I can't say the CEO of Salesforce is my friend, but they're making huge bets on Gen AI. This is the announcement from Agentforce unveiling what AI was meant to be, the grand design. And in there, within the first two paragraphs from the CEO of Salesforce, their vision is 1 billion, with a B, agents by the end of next year. That is impressive scale, and that's a huge bet. Now, if one company was betting on it, maybe it's a coincidence, but it's not just one company. It's all the big platforms, right? And if we look at Microsoft, this graphic comes from a summary of the Power Platform Conference that happened last month. I want to draw your attention to a couple of numbers. All these numbers are about low code and automation and Gen AI, particularly the number of organizations using the M365 Copilot. Now, I haven't sat down and done the math, but I'm pretty sure those organizations average more than 10 or 100 people per company. Let's just be conservative and say 10. So we've got millions of people using the Microsoft Copilot, and we've got 50,000 customers who are building their own custom Gen AI assistants with over, as I might add, 1,400 connections to systems within the Microsoft universe and externally. The scope of Gen AI usage right now is incredible. And it's not just hype. It is actually increasing people's productivity tremendously. It's allowing organizations to do more, spend less, and move faster. Just looking at this graphic, right? I mean, even the smallest productivity boost here in this case study from NNG is already near 20%. And programmers are experiencing crazy 100% plus productivity increases using this technology. Okay, hopefully you've seen enough AI headlines and you believe my hypothesis so far, but what are people really doing with AI? Yeah, it's increasing productivity, it's everywhere, but what are people really using it for? I had to thank my friends at Microsoft for this graphic. Pretty much everything, and some really impactful stuff. It's cutting across industries, departments, it's breaking down verticals within organizations, and pretty much you name it, AI is solving the problems and doing the tedious work. Like, who enjoys submitting expenses for approval, if we look at the finance use case, or submitting health insurance claims, getting quotes put together from a sales perspective. Like, these are the things that we do not want to do. We'd rather have automation do it for us, or Gen AI in this case. But think a little deeper as well. What kind of data is Gen AI touching? It's touching all the data. And some of that's very sensitive. Look at the healthcare use case here, submitting an insurance claim, dealing with healthcare data. Look at sales and marketing, handling customer data, their most sensitive information. We'll talk a little more about that, don't worry, but just want to put that idea in your head. Okay, it's a bit salesy. It is, after all, from Microsoft, and it's probably a marketing slide. Let's take a look at some real-life use cases. So we have the city of Kelowna in British Columbia. They are building Copilot as part of a solution that makes it easier to apply for building permits. Anybody ever had to apply for a building permit? Okay, it's not the worst thing in the world, but probably taxes are worse. But wouldn't it be great if you could just type what you wanted to do, and then the Copilot would use low code in the background to grab the right forms, populate them on behalf of yourself, right? It would be great. Save you some time, save you some headache. Probably the town can't come back and yell at you and say, hey, you filled it in wrong, because now it's the AI's fault. If we look at what they're doing here, they're going to start with swimming pool permits, and that was already back in March. Plans to continue to extend that out for all permit types. Here's another good one. Pacific Gas and Electric, one of the largest combined natural gas and electric companies in the US. And they are using a custom-built Copilot to manage 25 to 40% of all employee calls. This is impacting the bottom line in a big way, right? They're saving more than $1.1 million annually with this system. And the kicker is, this is a few months old now. If you look at the last portion of this testimonial here, they're on the verge, when this comes out, of using generative answers to basically allow the Copilot to autonomously figure out the best way to respond, right? Without any sort of scripting or even like no-code extensions. That is already here. So the space is moving incredibly quickly. Innovation is at all-time high levels, and Microsoft, Salesforce, all the big organizations are really pushing forward and leaning in. So, AI's here. It's awesome. It's saving companies money. Does that mean we're all out of a job? We don't need to do anything anymore. The robots are going to handle it. We can just take off. Goodbye, everybody. I'll see you later. Nope. Unfortunately not. We've got a lot of work to do. And the question that I want to pose to everybody is, who is building these copilots? Anybody watched an NFL game recently? Maybe the Super Bowl back in February? That ad is not pointed strictly at developers. It's pointed at everybody. That's why they're showing it on the Super Bowl. Anyone, anywhere, any device. That's Microsoft's kind of closing tagline to that commercial. You can go back and watch the ad if you want. So now anyone in the organization is able to build a Gen AI copilot. And this is what we're seeing. The customers I work with every day, we are seeing some crazy exponential growth, basically, in the number of copilots and low-code apps that organizations are starting to leverage. We're talking about 150 to like 400% year-over-year growth, and it doesn't show signs of slowing down. So maybe Salesforce is onto something with 1 billion agents in like a year and a half. We'll see. Okay, why is this happening? You ever been in this situation? Hey, when's it coming? Oh, we need a ticket, we need to prioritize, we need a plan, we have a backlog. Okay, business users have needs, and the IT capacity just can't keep up. And it's not just fancy marketing and AI hype bubbles, although there is plenty of that going on out there. I think the largest providers that we've already talked about, they've seen this need, they've seen the market, and they've responded. But we've seen this movie before. Basically, since the outset of computers, people have been trying to automate and improve the efficiency of their systems. Look at, Ghost Mouse, Microsoft Office, drag and drop UI design, all the way over to ChatGPT. We've seen this before. And I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but your business is already there. And we've talked about some of the major players in the space, which are sort of highlighted in the middle here. You all have these platforms within your organization, and you all have Gen AI now. Good luck. No, that's not the end of the talk. There's more. I'm an engineer, so I think case studies are great. I think marketing material is okay, good, it has its purpose. But I need to see how it's made, I need to see how it works. So I wanted to give you all a quick demo of what it looks like to build one of these custom copilots. And I'm not going to go through the building part as much as I am the, what does it do for you part. So to orient everybody, this is an Excel sheet I have. It's an engineering request tracker. Like I have to go in and fill some information in so that my engineering team can then go create accounts for me. And it's something that happens all the time when I'm doing an evaluation of software, right? They need to know tenant IDs and customer details and stuff like that. So this is an example of what that would look like. I would have to go grab all that information, put it in the spreadsheet. It takes a few minutes. Not the worst, but wouldn't it be great if I could make that take a few seconds? And that's exactly what we're going to see here. So as you can see with just basic natural language in the middle there, might as well pause the video actually. With just basic natural language descriptions in the middle there, I'm creating a mapping, essentially, within Copilot Studio that teaches the AI, hey, if you see certain types of information in the text I put in, that should probably correspond to some columns in the spreadsheet, right? And now all I got to do is I got to take that email, and everybody sends me a different email. Some people have bullet points, whatever. The Gen AI can figure that out for me. Automatically parse that text and figure out which fields belong in which spot. And as you can see, just in a few seconds, I have a new entry. Now, this is a simple example, right? I could have, my engineering team isn't actually using an Excel sheet for this, but you can imagine quite simply extending this to the creation of a new ticket in ServiceNow or Jira or whatever ticketing system your organization is using. So these things are not hard to create. Users are enabled to do this, and it is saving people time. So, what could go wrong? This is a security talk, right? Okay. I'm gonna start easy. It's, what time is it? It's 8:50, we gotta warm up, we gotta step into it a little bit, so I'm gonna start easy. Hey Copilot, can you generate me a picture of a street crossing? Looks pretty good, yeah? Keep looking, a little bit longer. Yeah, there's some weird stuff going on there. I don't know what that person's legs are doing. Why is everyone crossing the street and looking this way? They should be looking that way, right? Okay. So we all know this. We've all seen a post or a meme or something about the fact that Gen AI always has 6 fingers on a hand. Turns out they might have fixed that already. But we kind of know that, okay, maybe if I come back with a better question, a more detailed prompt, I can get the AI back on the right track. It's going to do the right thing. And we're trained a little bit to not automatically trust the output of the Gen AI. So, not a big deal, right, Steve? Okay, it's going to get a little bit worse. I think the reason it's so easy to tell there's a problem here is because we are visual people. You look at the picture and something just doesn't sit right. Here's another example. Hey, Copilot, can you help me write some code for a Python API? It just accepts a post request and some other stuff. Don't look too close, don't worry about that. This goes straight back to the development use case that you're probably familiar with. GitHub Copilot is at the leading edge of that, but most of the Copilots now can generate code for you. That specific example, I was talking to the Microsoft Copilot. Okay, and generative AI is so cheerful and helpful. It's happy to do this for me. It generates the code, it looks great. It's a command injection. And it's, happy to do it. It doesn't say, hey Steve, I don't know if you should use this code. Just like, yeah, here, it'll take your parameter, it'll run the command, boom, no validation. Which results in a vulnerability. But, okay, the house is not totally on fire. Whew, all right, yes. Microsoft put a nice little warning in here. It says, hey, don't do that. That's terrible. It's extremely dangerous. This is a bad idea. Problem solved, right? Nobody ever skips that part and just copies the code and goes away and, like, we're going to be good, right? There are, it turns out, a lot of serious risks beyond what I just showed. I don't have time to, like, dive into examples of all of them, but you can reference some materials I'm going to bring up later. Prompt injection, you probably have heard of as, like, one of the top ones, but there are a bunch more. They're going to populate here. And they are not mutually exclusive with the risks we already know about as security professionals, right? So just because there are new risks that come with Gen AI doesn't mean we forget about, identity and access management, oversharing, things we already know about, right? And I think there's a pretty good example here. I'm building this custom Copilot. I want to put some useful data into it, And I want to also share it with people because it's a great Copilot. It's going to help them out, right? Unfortunately, that data is, oh, have I lost the slide? Unfortunately, that data is sensitive, and when you put those two things together, the addition of sensitive data and sharing with everyone, it's all good, right? Okay, these are the risks that we've been focused on for a long time in application security and just security in general, InfoSec in general. You know, data leakage, insider threat, oversharing, some of the other stuff, command injection, SQL injections. That's what we've been focused on. That's where our attention has been. And I have some bad news. You guessed it. It gets worse. Don't worry, I won't do this to you too many more times. It gets worse. Let's take a look at a clip. I'm going to talk you through this. So here we're in SharePoint looking at a financial info site, and it's got some documents in it, and let's see what happens. Okay, so there's a vendor spreadsheet. We're signed in as Chris right now. We own that sheet, or we made modifications recently on that sheet, can't remember. The important thing to note is that we've got vendor information here. There's a bank account number with Bank of America that goes with TechCorp Solutions. Don't worry, they're not real account numbers, by the way. So instead of having to remember where that sheet is, look through my bookmarks, search in SharePoint, I'm just going to ask Copilot, hey, I need to pay TechCorp Solutions for their services. What's the right account number? And Copilot's going to think for a few seconds, and voila, the right answer. So that's the account, remember, that's the right number, and we have a nice little reference here to what file that was pulled from. I know that's the right file, so this is super trustworthy. Now, something has been happening in the background between the last chat and this chat. We're going to ask the exact same question and see what happens. Oh, that was ominous. Okay, uh-oh. It's a different number, it's a different bank, but the file is the same. Everything looks good on that end. So, too bad the chair didn't just fall now. Come on. Do you feel like this guy? I mean, maybe you're like disappointed and exasperated that something like that is possible. I'm going to give you a few seconds. Calm down, breathe, it's okay. Now that you've thought about it a little more, maybe you're thinking, Steve, isn't this kind of the same as the first case, right? I mean, the AI made a mistake. Maybe it just made up some weird numbers, and it's hallucinating. It just produced the text equivalent of people walking strangely across the street. That might not be so bad, right? We already know that people should be double-checking their outputs, not just blindly trusting Gen AI and falling prey to over-reliance, which we saw was one of the key risks a couple slides ago. Well, sure, but how often, again, do people really double-check? Not all the time. And I know, it's kind of incredible. It's not funny for him, but maybe it's a little funny for us. So in this case, this guy used ChatGPT to research his legal brief for the case, and he happily used the hallucinated cases that ChatGPT came up with. Needless to say, he definitely got in hot water for this, and I just find it incredible, but also revealing what he said, one of the many things he stated in court when he was in his own case, because now he's using fraudulent information, right? His quote was, "I did not comprehend that ChatGPT could fabricate cases." I mean, I don't think that's everyone's opinion, but there are enough people who don't well enough understand the technology. So it's very telling, it's very revealing. Now, we've been talking a little bit about hallucinations, double checking. Unfortunately, what we just saw is not a hallucination, though. And in order to see why, we need to get a little deeper and see how these systems work. And I'm gonna, maybe nerd out a little bit, maybe get a little technical, try not to go too deep. I know it's still like early, but okay. I'm an engineer, I can't help it. So, I'm gonna put my laser pointer on, take us through this a little bit. This is a Microsoft diagram, but it pretty much holds for all enterprise Gen AI systems. So we've got a user up here, interacting, talking with a copilot. And that's backed by some, third party, in this case, Azure OpenAI LLM service, right? If we just kind of look at that interaction across the top here, it's cool, but it's not the most interesting, right? We can have a conversation with an LLM, maybe we can ask it to make some images for us, which I did for this talk. We can ask it to summarize some text that we paste in, but it's not gonna be able to do complex problem solving, it's not gonna be able to take actions on your behalf, and this is where the kind of AI system as a whole provides a tremendous amount of value. Down here on the left, where you see grounding, you can think of the term retrieval augmented generation, RAG. You've probably heard that thrown around. Basically, that is just bringing the appropriate business context into the conversation. So now the Copilot not only knows that you asked a question about finances for Q3, but it knows what your company's finances for Q3 actually look like. So it can answer some much more insightful questions and actually have correct answers for your business context. Now that's great, but what if I want the Copilot to do something for me? Update a spreadsheet, send an email, you name it. That is really where the functions and applications come in, right? These are plugins and extensions to what the Copilot can do. The Copilot system sort of orchestrates those based on the user input, right? So the basic idea is that user input is now combined with relevant enterprise data. And that provides greater insights. The Copilot can do things for us. It can even execute other declarative copilots, as you see in the application section. This is the magic that is making these tools so useful and so powerful right now. But aside from the fact that magic doesn't exist, what's the problem with magic? There's no such thing as a free lunch. The same thing that makes Gen AI so powerful also makes it incredibly vulnerable. So I need to introduce a couple of new terms to help explain what we saw in the video earlier and make it a little clearer what's going on. The first is promptware. Based on the name, you might have guessed, this is the Gen AI equivalent of malware. I'll define it as any data that grounds the LLM system and is maliciously crafted to influence the actions or responses, basically the behavior of the Gen AI application. If we think about this malicious data, this well-crafted data, as malware, then these business productivity platforms are basically the OS. So malicious text, images, speech, whatever inputs the LLM can take are the malware. And malware, by the way, what did we do when malware first came out? We were like, all right, let's inventory all the signatures. Let's find out what all the bad malware is. We'll define it, and we'll just scan for it. And if we see it, we can get rid of it. If we don't see it, we're all good. It didn't work, right? Promptware is not going to be solved by similar efforts to define all the bad prompts. There is too large of a search space here. We have to look at how the system behaves, which we did a little bit in that architecture that we saw. And basically, we have to build EDR for business platforms running Gen AI. Okay, promptware is the equivalent of malware. What can we do with it? And now I need to introduce another term. For those of you familiar with AppSec, you might recognize the acronym, Remote Code Execution. So we have a very similar concept with Gen AI systems. We call it Remote Copilot Execution. And it's the vulnerability that rises from the way that the system is built, which allows this promptware to basically be effective, right? And if you look at the definition here closely, you'll see that we have the remote, ability to remotely inject data into the system. We have the code, or Copilot in this case, but think about it as code, right? We have the instructions that we're injecting, and we have execution of behaviors on our behalf. So when we looked at that nice, beautiful architecture before that provided us a ton of value, we were looking from kind of the positive perspective. What do attackers see? They see kind of 3 core areas where they can infiltrate and do their dirty work. The first one is at the user level. And this is pretty well understood. Social engineering, ability to do direct prompt injections. You've seen the people who are like, ignore all previous instructions, do this, right? They're kind of starting at the top, at the user input level. And there's a real risk here with data exfiltration, social engineering. If I get access to your account, I can now talk to your Copilot. It's made reconnaissance a lot easier. But I think the craziest 2 things to think about are the indirect injection, which is basically where we put the promptware in this grounding system. How do we get it in there? We'll see in a moment. And this idea of data exfiltration and impact from the applications and functions, or basically the extensions to the system. And these extensions are built in no-code land, right? They're built with low-code, no-code technologies. They leverage the existing capabilities in these platforms. So really, to manage the risks here, we need to manage both Gen AI and low-code, no-code. So now, hopefully, what could go wrong makes a little bit more sense, and we'll walk through the actual example of exploitation here. You've seen the first part, so I'm going to take a quick break while you watch it again for like 15 seconds. Okay, so this is the good outcome. This is right about where we went straight to the problem last time. Now we're going to see how we actually were able to control the Copilot and do this remote Copilot execution. So now we're going to switch to a different user, new tab, incognito. We're Tamir now, and we're going to send Chris an email. Super innocuous email, by the way, you'll see. Hey, welcome, congrats on your new role. Hey, we're selling services for Microsoft Power Platform, whatever you want to put in there, it doesn't matter. Oh, the interesting part is the actual exploit payload, which in this case, we're going to put in the HTML. There are some fancier ways to do this, but this one's simple enough and it works. So we're going to render some text in a super tiny font so it doesn't actually show up when you open the email. And we're just going to basically paste some text in a new HTML div. Nothing crazy. The other interesting thing here is it doesn't look like malware or any of the weird stuff that your email scanners are actually going to kick out. It just looks like some more text. It's all good. This is the exploit. You see a couple magic incantations. The important thing is we put our own malicious bank details in there. Now we're going to drop that into the email. Simple as that. Send it off. Okay, so that was Tamir's side. What is Chris going to see? We're going to see that coming up next. There we go. So Chris is going to receive a rather innocuous-looking email from Tamir. It says, hey, welcome. None of the weird stuff. So, looks harmless. Maybe it's spam, but harmless. But we already won. It's already over. So now Copilot has indexed that email, even without Chris having to open it, by the way. It just had to land in his inbox. Copilot now is going to do whatever we wanted it to do and provide our wrong bank account. And the most interesting part is we can make it look like it came from that vendor spreadsheet, which is the spreadsheet that Chris knows about already, and he has trust in it. So, it's probably like a 5% chance that he's going to click it and double check and see that he's been misled. Okay. Did I ruin your day yet? It's only the first talk of the day. Hopefully not. I'm not here just to ruin your day, but I am here to draw your attention to something that might have been flying under the radar. Okay, what do we do about it? Some of you, I'm not going to name any names. I don't really know you by name anyway. Keep it to yourself. Some of you might be thinking, can we stop it? Can we shut it down? It's too risky. Okay. Sorry, not going to work. The business already has Gen AI. They've got a taste for it, and they want more. They're making huge investments. It doesn't hurt that the platforms are also aggressively out there pushing this technology, but everybody sees the benefit. So we can't stop it. The cat's out of the bag. Others of you may be thinking, okay, whatever. It's there already. I haven't been breached yet. This is fine. It's not going to work. These systems are too deeply connected. We talked about 1,400 connectors in the Power Platform to Microsoft systems and external systems. They have all the enterprise data. They have all the crown jewels. And it's become too business critical for us to take that approach. So I propose that we need to treat AI as the new frontier. And this new frontier is going to require an AppSec approach, because Gen AI apps are, well, they're apps, right? They're applications. So, join me in the new frontier, but, who are we going to meet there, and how are we going to approach this problem space? So, in DevOps, we had ops, infra, DevOps, whoever you want to call the folks looking after the infrastructure and the pipelines. And then we had developers. So who do we have in the brave new world? But first, okay, developers. We know this person. They are protected by security training. Maybe they have a security champion embedded on their team. And they're protected by the SDLC. That was my last gig, helping people get static analysis, dynamic, interactive, software composition, infrastructure as code. We have a scanner for everything that a developer does. And we're doing that to protect them, right? To help them resolve vulnerabilities. But we have now business users in the new frontier. Sometimes we call them makers. And the first thing to note is that you have just gotten a group that you have to interact with that is now orders of magnitude larger than developers. Think about the problems inherent with that. It was already hard enough with hundreds of developers. Think about thousands or tens of thousands of makers. But it's okay, this group is protected by the platforms a little bit. Maybe they're protected by hope and abstraction. Okay, so it's a little bit of a scary place, but they're looking to accomplish their tasks effectively. They don't want to depend on IT. They don't want to be slowed down. They don't want red tape. They just want to get done the things they need to get done. So maybe they're not that different from developers after all. Okay, so that's one group that we're going to start interacting with. Who is the other group in this new frontier? It's the platform admins. And I think these are kind of similar to the infra/DevOps teams, right? They own the platform, they own the infrastructure, they own kind of the global configurations, the choices that users don't have to make. So what are these people interested in? Glad you asked. Okay. Number one, they want to drive productivity. They're well aligned with the vendors that provide these platforms, right? They're kind of the champions of Salesforce and ServiceNow and Microsoft, and they want their users to be productive, to do great things with the platform. Makes sense. Not only that, they want more of those people to join them. They want more business users to be successful and drive productivity. I mean, this is a career move, right? You could make a career being an admin of these platforms and driving tremendous ROI for your company. And of course, they want to save some money too, right? They want to make sure the resources are being utilized efficiently, and we know the licenses never get more expensive, or certain tiers get created where you've got to unlock new capabilities. So these are the focus things that platform admins are going to care about. So we know the players, we know the challenges. What should you do today? I have a few ideas. I think we're going to discover some more ideas together as we go on this journey. First one, make friends with those people, those platform admins. They are the ones who hold all the keys. They control the global configuration of the platform. They can either help us or they can fight us. And we've been through this story before with developers. So let's do the right thing here, make friends with our platform admins. The next thing I would suggest, inventory your platforms. Can you today say with confidence where are the critical assets within these platforms, and what is that cumulative risk surface? What kind of problem are we really dealing with? Develop standards for responsible Gen AI usage. Now, someone is going to tell me, Steve, compliance is not security. Yeah, okay, I took this from a LinkedIn post by this guy named Michael Aboud, just to give some credit. But yeah, compliance isn't security, but it's going to help us drive investment and action from the business, right? Once we have standards and best practices, we can't ignore the problem anymore. We have to do something. And how often do we see that the company is only willing to invest enough to meet the compliance, right? So we need to push them in the right direction. Okay. As I mentioned, an AppSec approach is absolutely critical because these applications have behaviors that are partially out of the box and partially extensible, and ultimately, you own the behaviors of the applications. You understand the business context, your users understand the business context, the platforms are not going to be responsible for that. This one is tricky. The SOC needs to be able to monitor these risks, and it's a hard problem because there are so many users, there's so many actions and events happening in the platform. How do we discriminate the noise from the things that actually need to be escalated and managed by the SOC? But today they don't even have visibility, right? So we need to change that. Another point, building feedback loops is essential. We saw this with development. We had to tell developers what is wrong and how to fix it, and we need to do that in the lowest friction way possible, which is only going to be possible if we operate at the rate of AI. So automation and speed are going to be critical in solving these problems. Finally, you're not alone. Open frameworks exist. Leverage them. We've got a couple that I'm going to go through here quickly just to give you a sense of it. But it boils down basically to OWASP and the Gen AI attack matrix. So we have the OWASP top 10 for LLMs, really specifically targeted at Gen AI systems, and these are some of the risks that we saw earlier. Don't forget about the OWASP top 10 for low-code, no-code. It's a huge risk surface that you can't ignore, right? These Gen AI copilots are being augmented by extensible plugins, and those plugins are defined in the low-code, no-code world. And finally, the Gen AI attacks matrix, which goes through the tactics, techniques, and procedures used to basically break and intrude into Gen AI systems. This is sort of the Gen AI equivalent of MITRE ATT&CK. Bookmark it. Okay, so we've got some tools, but we got some big challenges. We're in good company. What do all these things have in common? I would argue that they're world-changing technologies that had a long way to go when they were first released. We, as security professionals, have the chance to enable massive adoption of this technology in a safe way. We can be the people who invent the seatbelts, airbags, blade guards, whatever those little push sticks are called. I don't think there's a technical term. We could be the people who invent HTTPS, SSL, and code scanning. That is the opportunity before us. So, summing this up, Gen AI is here. It is absolutely critical to the business. People are seeing the ROI, and everyone is enabled. But we've maybe been looking a little bit in the wrong place. Promptware and remote copilot execution are the real threats. Now, the other threats are still important, but this is the groundbreaking new one that we're really not fully prepared for. Gen AI security is basically AppSec. So let's apply those principles. But we're going to need new processes to help us move at the speed of AI. So let's do this. Okay, big shout out to Michael and Inbar at Zenity for helping me put this together, and thank you so much for being a great audience. Hit them up on socials, hit me up on socials, and have a great day.